Good morning, everyone, to the Women in White Coats Heroes panel. We're so excited to have this amazing panel of 2021 Women in White Coat Hero Nominees. And what we're going to do this morning is not only celebrate them and honor them for all of their achievements and accomplishments and the impact they're making in the world, but we're also going to have a Q&A panel where we can all learn from one another, and you can, anyone in the audience can ask questions as well of our panelists. And so what I'll do is, first of all, introduce everybody, just say names of the names of everyone who's a part of this panel, and we'll also give them 2 minutes to introduce themselves briefly. So first of all, on our panel, we have Dr. Fariel Mashad. Can you go ahead and unmute and just introduce yourself for 2 minutes, please?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Fariel Mishoy. I actually live in Honolulu, Hawaii. I am a palliative care physician and a mother of 2 children, and I'm originally from Iran. I've been in the US since 1989, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm also a life coach. I am a podcaster, I'm a blogger, and I talk a lot about living well with serious illness. It's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you here too, Dr. Michaud. And next we have Dr. Carla Lamb.
Thanks again for having me. Again, I'm Dr. Carla Lamb. I'm an interventional pulmonologist and a pulmonary critical care physician in Burlington, Massachusetts. And we founded our own interventional pulmonary women's group called WHIP. And I'm also very involved in the lung screening initiative. And we've been screening here at our institution at Leahy since 2012. And so we have a rescue lung group that really is pro-patient for advocating for lung screening, especially in the female population. A lot of women are getting their mammos, but not getting their lung screening when they qualify. So that's a lot of my energy goes into that. And so it's really great to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Lamb. And for everybody who's registered for the conference, Dr. Lamb is also giving a keynote called Sealing What's Sealing, Creating Your Unique Career Path. So make sure you all listen into that talk later today as well. Next, we have Dr. Ellen Hayes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Ellen Hayes from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a reproductive endocrinologist and infertility specialist, and I work with a practice called Vios Fertility Institute. So I'm actually in Chicago today covering IVF procedures, so pardon my appearance. I'm between egg retrievals and embryo transfers. Grew up in the Midwest and trained in Milwaukee and at Emory University for my fellowship. And thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here today.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Teresa Jacobs.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to join. Teresa Jacobs. I am a neurocritical care specialist, so I'm a professor in both neurosurgery and neurology here at Michigan Medicine, which is the newer name for the University of Michigan. I have been the medical director for my ICU. I started our neurocritical care ICU, and I've turned that over and moved into hospital leadership, currently the medical director for care management. And if you've ever been in a role like that, you know there are days you just want to pull your hair out, let me tell you, trying to get patient disposition and social work issues. But I actually love clinical medicine. I still practice, but I also do a lot of administrative work. And I have a daughter who's 12 years old and a wonderful husband, and we try to make it all work with a dog and a rabbit. So having said that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Nicole Plenty.
Good morning. I am Nicole Plenty. I am a board certified OBGYN and maternal fetal medicine specialist in Houston, Texas. I've been here about 1.5 years now. And it's been a good transition to the big city, I would say. I practice full-time in Katy, Texas, actually, which is a suburb of Houston. I also have a podcast called Pregnancy Pearls with Dr. Plenty and a YouTube channel called Pregnancy Pearls with Dr. Plenty, basically to help reach patients so that they can know how to navigate safely through pregnancy. And that's basically giving them the tools needed to know what questions to ask, when to go to their doctor, when to come back to the hospital, so that we can try to reduce maternal mortality and morbidity. This morning, I was on the Texas AIM Hypertension Collaborative Bundle Talk. I'm one of the faculty of that, to try to implement systems in our hospital to help negate hypertensive crises in pregnant women, specifically reducing maternal morbidity and mortality related to preeclampsia and eclampsia and complications that can come with that. I'm very passionate about that because I had a cousin that passed away from complications of eclampsia and had acute respiratory distress syndrome and died at age 33. So I'm very passionate about reaching women, helping women, making sure they know warning signs of preeclampsia and when to present to the hospital. I am a wife. My husband is a minister, and I have a 2-year-old, which I did write in the book chapter. I'm one of the women in white coats about my experience with my complicated, super high risk pregnancy. He is my one and only golden child because of that. And we also have a dog named Sophie.
All right, thank you, Nicole. And next we have Dr. Deanna Aftab-Guy.
Good morning. I'm Deanna Guy. And Fariel, my dad's Iranian, so I totally, when I saw your name, I knew you're Persian. I am in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a pediatric endocrinologist. I started out in pediatrics, and then when I was pregnant with my 3rd child, went back and did my fellowship. So very different attitude as compared to someone who comes right from residency. I was in practice in Chapel Hill, and then came here to Nashville, did my fellowship, and I was at Vanderbilt practicing in academic practice. I was in the lab doing glucose clamp studies and things that I couldn't even pronounce. When I transitioned from Vanderbilt, I got my healthcare MBA at Belmont Massey, and worked a little bit in managed care with Medicaid world and through AmeriGroup, and also with United Health, and continued to practice part-time when I joined my partner here at TriStar Children's. And that's where I've been for the past 6 years. I'm full-time practice, very busy. I have 5 children, married, 2 bulldogs, and continue to work very closely with children with type 1 diabetes. I'm on the board with JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. We do a lot of fundraisers and awareness and helping kids get through a really difficult time. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. And let's see, next we have Dr. Shika Jain.
Hi, everyone. So thanks so much for inviting me to this panel. So I'm Dr. Shika Jain. I am a medical oncologist at the University of Illinois. I'm also the founder and chair of the Women in Medicine Summit, which is a group that I founded. It's a program that I founded a couple of years ago that's now expanded into a lot of different aspects, not just the summit. So that takes up a lot of my time. I also am one of the founders of the group Impact, which was created at the beginning of the pandemic to amplify healthcare voices and disseminate evidence-based information and really advocate for policies that were based in science and not nonsense and misinformation. And then I'm clinical, so I also see patients at the University of Illinois, and I'm the director of communication strategies there as well, and digital innovation. So a lot of my research falls into healthcare communication and digital innovation relating to cancer care. I'm a neuroendocrine specialist, and I have 3 children. I have a 6-year-old daughter, and then I have twin boys who are, my daughter's 6, she's turning 7 next month. And then my boys are 3. Had to think about that for a second.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jain. And now, last but not least, we actually have our 2021 Hero of the Year, Dr. Mona Khanna. Congratulations. Let's all give her a virtual applause. This was all of these amazing women who are on this panel were nominated by their peers as Women in White Coat Heroes. And Dr. Khanna has been doing such amazing work, as well as all the other ladies here, but she was voted as the Hero of the Year by her peers. So congratulations. We'd love to hear more about you and all the amazing work that you're up to. Oh, we can't hear you, Dr. Khanna. If you could unmute, please. Oh, no, I muted again.
All right, here we go. You'd think
There we
we've all been on enough of these calls. We'd know this thing by like the back of our hand. Sorry, first of all, it's wonderful to be associated with a group of women like yourselves. I am just blown away listening to all the initiatives that everyone has been involved in and has founded and created, and the books and the foundations and the, all of it is just so inspiring. I am a physician who was born in born in India, but I've been raised in Chicago and have lived here most of my life. I'm actually here now because I'm visiting my mother, but I live in Palm Springs, California, which you're all welcome to come visit. It's 100 degrees there now, so I took a 50-degree hit to come to Chicago. I am a workers' comp doctor. But after medical school, I actually did 3 residencies. So I did, the first one was internal medicine. Second one was preventive medicine and public health, i.e. the pandemic specialty. And then the third is occupational medicine, which a lot of physicians, interestingly enough, haven't even heard of. And that is work medicine. And that's where workers' comp falls into. And that is a specialty largely of older white men. So for some of you who have broken barriers, you can understand what I'm saying. It is a medical legal specialty, and it's got me so interested in the legal field that I would love to get a law degree, whether I just stop practicing and go full time, or whether I do it online and part time. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely interested in pursuing a law degree. I love hot yoga. I love to swim, and both of those were closed. The studios and the pools were closed during the pandemic, so I had to be creative and think of other ways to exercise. I travel a lot for my work. I do a lot of expert witness testimony, and I do a lot of depositions. In fact, I had one yesterday from here. So I can't really have any live people or animals in the house because I can't take care of them. I was thinking of getting a bonsai tree, but unfortunately it'd have to be fake because I'm not sure I'd be there enough to water it. But anyway, it's very nice to be here with all of you and to meet you virtually, and hope we continue to keep in touch and do great things.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So we'd love to, I think Amber is going to moderate the Q&A and chat looking for questions. So everybody in the audience, feel free to ask your questions there in the Q&A or the chat. But let's go ahead and get started with a question that I'll start with. I'd love to hear from you all. What is it that inspires you, and where does your passion come from? And you can either raise your hand, or I can go ahead and select people as well to answer the question, but feel free to. All right, yes, Dr. Michaud.
Yeah, so, as I mentioned earlier, if people kind of joined in now, I'm a palliative care physician, and, I feel like I have such an urgency to live a very intentional life. I feel like no matter what's happening in your life, if you've had a rough day, if your work is stressful, if your kids are struggling at school, whatever that might be of a point of contention in your life, when you deal with people that are not leaving the hospital, that have been dealt a bad hand and their life is very short, I think that it really gives me purpose and really makes me appreciate my life way more than if my patients were going to get better. And I think that gives me a sense of urgency to tell everyone that your life is perfect, like no matter what you're dealing with. As women, we get older and we get concerned about our looks. And I say, hey, listen, aging is a privilege that is denied to many. So as I heard so beautifully It's hard for me to see because the light is in my face, but I think Dr. Plenty was talking about the loss of her cousin. I think when we're touched by death that closely, it really accentuates the way we live our lives. And that's my passion, to let everyone know that your life really matters no matter where you are, and it's perfect. And you just have to live it the most intentional way possible.
That's such a beautiful message, and you're right. It is a gift. I think that every year that I get older, I try to remind myself I'm lucky to be here another year. Go ahead, Dr. Khanna.
So I'll go next. Thank you very much for those inspiring words, Dr. Michaud. I can see where your specialty really helps you value life. I thought that was a good segue to talk a little bit about actually probably why I'm here. And that is my humanitarian work that I've been doing over the past 20 years. So the same way about thinking and feeling about the value of life and the value of people. In 1999, I was watching TV. I'm kind of a news junkie. My undergraduate degree is journalism, and I've been a reporter for years and years. But anyway, I was watching the news and I was seeing all the ethnic cleansing and the civil unrest that was going on in Eastern Europe. With the Serbians and the Bosnians, Yugoslavia, all that area. And I saw that a number of those folks were being sent to, the refugees were being sent to different countries, including the United States. And they were looking for doctors to help with the public health screening, which is one of my specialties. So I thought, oh, that's great. How can I get involved? Well, that was a mechanism for me to get involved with what's called the Disaster Medical Assistance Team. We have about 50 teams in the United States. Not every state has a team, and some states have more than one team. And what those teams do is they farm out and help during disaster response. So in the United States, I've probably been to about 10 disasters. The last huge one was, of course, Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And then I was just deployed this past winter to a critical access hospital in Wisconsin for surge relief for COVID. And that then led me to join other non-governmental organizations across the world. I think I've been involved in 6 of them to provide humanitarian or disaster response internationally. So kind of along the lines what you were saying, Dr. Michaud, is that, every life is valuable. We have to take the cards that we've been dealt with and do the best that we can. But when I go international, I'm really acutely reminded of that because these are developing countries that actually function chronically at a low-level disaster state. They never have enough doctors. They don't have enough medical care. They don't have enough supplies or equipment. So when a disaster comes in, whether it's a typhoon or the Bangkok floods or the Haiti earthquake, they are really in desperate need. And so I like to go over there and I like to help assuage fears. In addition to providing medical care, you do a lot of mental health work with them too, and reassure them as much as you can that things will turn around and be for the better. So that's one of my passions and what I like to do, which is part of the reason that I crafted my lifestyle, including my professional career, such that it's very flexible so that I can actually get up and go at a moment's notice.
Love it. Love all the work that you've been doing, Dr. Khanna. It's so important. And thank you for that. All right, Dr. Jacobs, we'd love to hear from you.
So I am so awestruck by some of the members that you have here on this panel and the ones who've just spoken before me. I would have to say that the passion for me that drives me in everything is the idea of education. Before I ever went to medical school, I was a high school teacher for 10 years. And that was an eye-opening experience. And I loved it. And it was very hard to make the decision to go to medical school. And believe me, that first year I regretted it immensely. But going through that and getting through that, and what I found is that everything involves education. We educate our patients, we educate our staff members. We really set the course for the future. Doing it well and preparing other people who are in training to do it well. That's what brought me to the university out of private practice for an incredible loss of finances. But, when you work in academics, that's not the reason that you. I feel that being able to train physicians of the future their job well is so important. And my best day is a day when even if it's the smallest thing that I've helped a resident or the physical therapist or the respiratory therapist or one of our nurses learn that helps them to do the best care for their patients. That is a wonderful day.
Yes, indeed. All right, I'd like to shift gears a little bit. And for those of you who are running like women's groups, Dr. Jane, Dr. Lamb, I'd love to hear, or all of us really, we're all women who wear many different hats, have family responsibilities, aside from our professional responsibilities. I'd love to hear from you, like, what are some ways for women doctors to find more balance? And maybe balance doesn't even exist. So feel free to answer that question in that way, if that's your answer. But we'd love to hear kind of how have you made it work wearing all these different hats?
So I can start. I just, first of all, everybody is on this panel is incredibly inspiring. So thank you to Women in White Coats for bringing these amazing women together. So I want to get real for a minute and say this year has been really hard. I mean, I think doing the work that all of us do in general is hard in clinical, non-clinical, and this year has been really hard. I will say, I feel like I thought I had a lot more idea of how to balance or at least integrate my work in life before this last year and a half. And I think this last year and a half, it completely fell off. Like my 6-year-old yelled at me the other day that I wasn't taking care of myself and I wasn't sleeping enough, and she's 6. So the fact that she pointed it out to me, I thought was kind of, I mean, it was kind of shocking to me that a 6-year-old had that much insight. So I actually just recently, about 2 weeks ago, made the decision that I needed to make some major changes because this pandemic has been, I mean, it's wreaked havoc on our family in more ways than one. So I have made a goal, which I have already failed, but you start again when you set a goal, where I'm trying to reintegrate things into my life that I know not only keep me healthy, but also keep my mental health okay. I used to run quite a bit, and the last year and a half, I think I've exercised maybe a total of like 8 times. So my husband still was making time for it. And when he was exercising, I was doing 20 other things, whether they were work related or family related. And someone actually said to me, they were like, your husband's still exercising. What's going on? And I said, well, I have all this other stuff to do. And they said, well, he's a physician too, and he's finding the time. And they said, you're just not prioritizing yourself. So I'm trying to exercise again. I'm trying to ask for what I need, which is really hard for me, whether it's at work or at home. I never, ever ask for what I need. And I believe I have martyr syndrome where I just keep doing things. And it's not that I want any recognition. I don't want people to say, oh, nice job, but I want to just do it. And because I feel the need, I have this need to like do things, and whether it's putting my own health at risk or not. And I decided that I need to stop doing that. So I'm trying really hard to ask my husband or my parents or my colleagues at work, hey, listen, I'm really overloaded. I'm really like, I just need some help, or I need to take a step back, or I need an extension. Or with my husband, I need you to do the dishes tonight. I mean, he stepped up a lot, but men don't always know what they need to do to help. And so I've started realizing that I need to verbalize what I need. And that has made a huge difference, even in the last couple of weeks, where I just said, I'm struggling, I need some help. And then specific to your question about women's groups. So the Women in Medicine Summit that I started, it's become much bigger than I thought it was going to become. And a lot of people have reached out to me now asking me for guidance and help if they're going through awful experiences at work or they've been targeted. And that's been emotionally draining as well, because I am the type of person, again, who wants to help everybody. So what I've realized is I don't have the tools or the skills or the experience to help every single person who comes to me, but I do have the skills to connect them with the people who can help them. So instead of trying to get, anytime someone asks me for help, whether it's with a paper or with a personal issue, instead of always being the person who says, yes, I can absolutely do that, because that's my default, I respond right away and say, yes, I'm there for you. What I've started saying is, I'm so sorry this has happened. I completely understand. Let me see if I can find you the best resource or the best person to help you navigate that. And that has also helped. We don't look out for ourselves, and no one else is going to look out for you as much as you're going to look out for yourself. So that's one thing that I am trying to practice what I preach. It is very hard when I've lived a lifetime of not doing that. So I think that's something that I've tried to do, to incorporate back some balance into my life. I'll let you know in a year how that's gone.
Yeah, and also, Shika, maybe you can just briefly touch on just like the whole concept of the third shift that you have, doing all the different things that you are doing.
Yeah, so I actually wrote an academic paper on this concept of the third shift. So we talk about our first shift, which is, you know, our job and what we're supposed to do. Then there's the second shift, which is when you come home and you've got to take care of kids, or if you've got elder care, or if you've got pets. Usually that kind of stuff falls on the woman in the home. And I mean, this is not to exclude women who are in same-sex couples, that also there's usually one person who a lot of this stuff falls upon. And so that's the second shift. And then the third shift is a lot of the work that all of us do in our free time. So it's equity work, it's humanitarian work, it's nonprofit work. A lot of times it's work that's really needed and really necessary, but you don't get paid for it. You don't get recognition for it. You don't get promoted for it. It's stuff we do because these are our passion projects. This is what we want to do. This is really important work for us to do, because it fills our cup. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us passionate. So one thing that I've been advocating for, and that a lot of women across the country are advocating for, is trying to find ways to get that work compensated. So we're trying to get advocacy work compensated. All this equity work that people tell me is a waste of my time, we're trying to find ways to get that compensated for, or put in promotion packets if you're in academics. There's a lot of groups that are now hiring chief diversity and equity and inclusion officers after this year. So there's a lot of ways to fund this type of work. Up until now, women often get put on these committees that are completely not beneficial to you, other than you feel like you're doing something good. So I also advocate for whatever you do, make sure you have some return on investment where you can put it on your CV, or you're getting a stipend, or there's something that comes out of it that's not only helping you feel better about what you're doing, but also it's something that you're going to have something to show for.
Such a great point. I see Nicole Plenty, Dr. Plenty raised her hand. Would you like to respond to this question? And then maybe Dr. Lamb?
Yes, I'll be short. I think that Dr. Jane brought up a lot of good points. One, the honey-do list has got to be super specific, right? So if you ask your husband to, hey, can you wash the dishes tonight? They are going to wash dishes and leave the stove top dirty. They're not going to wipe down anything. They're not going to wipe the refrigerator door. Like, they're not going to do that. So I've had to literally say, hey, you need to wash the dishes, wipe the sink out, wipe the countertop off, make sure the stove is clean. Can you do all those things? And he does them just fine if I ask him specifically to do all those things. Otherwise, I'm doing what? Going back and doing it for him, right? Even though to me, I meant like clean the whole kitchen. He took that as just wash the dishes. So I think that making sure we're very specific in our ask, whether that's with our husbands or with our kids, or even at work with our like medical assistants and things like that, making sure we're very specific with the list of things that they need to do to help us. The other piece that I've started doing, which I honestly need to do more of, is like making a list of priorities, meaning this is the list of things that other people can do. And I do them because I feel like they can't get done as well if I don't do them. But realistically, someone else can do this list just fine, versus the list that I have to do. I'm the only person that can do that because I have the knowledge to do it. And you delegate the list of things that you don't have to be the person doing, right? Like, do you have to be the person that's making the doctor's appointments for your kids? No. Like, do you have to be the person that's going to grocery shop? No, you can do like click list, or you can get your husband or somebody else to go and do those things for you. Even if that may mean hiring somebody to do them for you, you don't have to be the person that's doing this list. So for me, getting that, like this, I call it busy work, off of my plate and letting someone else do it has freed up a lot of time. And then even with the things that you are the person that has to do, like being realistic with yourself and saying, you know, am I really spread too thin? And for me, that's a matter of when do I actually say no? People ask me to give talks about maternal mortality and racism and hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. And it's great because that's my passion. That's what I want to talk about. I want to reach more people, but there's only so many hours in a day. So I have to be able to say, okay, this is going to be the thing that I'm getting paid to do. Like I have to do this for my job. So I have to prioritize this versus, hey, this is great, but I don't have the time to do this right now. Maybe I can suggest somebody else that's also doing fantabulous things to also give that talk. So it's basically spreading the wealth. And for me, a lot of people do want to get involved. They do want to be on panels and they want to speak. And so I haven't had a problem reaching out to other colleagues and saying, hey, this is an opportunity to speak. Do you want this opportunity to sort of spread and share the wealth? And that way I don't really burn a bridge with that organization because I have somebody else doing it. But I've also saved myself peace of mind. And then the last thing is you have to schedule time with yourself, right? Schedule time with yourself and for yourself. And I try to do that at least a half a day a week. I haven't been as successful in that during the pandemic. I need to, like Dr. Jane, I need to like check myself and revamp and start over with that goal. But making sure that I have like a half a day for myself and another half a day for like my husband and my family is pretty crucial. I mean, you want your family and your relationships to stay intact in the pandemic, and it's very stressful. It's a very stressful time right now. So making sure you're very intentional of like scheduling family time and then scheduling like you time, whether that's like, I'm going to go work out, or I'm going to go get a mani-pedi, or I'm just going to walk around the block and just clear my mind for 30 minutes and then just lay in my room in silence. Even if that's all it is, it's just making sure that that day, a half for yourself and a half for your family, is super important for me.
So many great tips shared there. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Lamb.
Yeah, I think it's great to hear everyone's strategies. And I think it's okay to learn as we go a little bit. And I guess a couple of things I would think about. I'm single, I have no children. I have really intentionally dedicated myself to my work, and it's just and it's been very organic, and so I'm very happy with the choice. But I will say the pros and cons of that are that there's not always someone there telling me, hey, take care of yourself. You're reminding me that I need to do something more until a signal goes off. And I've set the threshold so high that it takes a lot for that signal to warn me, hey, you need to start taking care of yourself. So I would just say for any of the single ladies out there, you need to be able to identify, family or friendship, something that helps you remain accountable and have a sounding board or a mirror to reflect on things when you get so deep into things, whether you love them or not. It's important to find some way to care for yourself. And the things that I found to be helpful, with the pandemic, we were front and center with COVID. It was quite scary. I'll be real. It was frightening, especially at first. And there's so many barriers. Literally, the mask, two masks, the shield, the gown, and you couldn't even see what emotions people were having. And so it was kind of an interesting time. But if a pandemic has done anything for me, it's really forced me into self-reflection. And I guess there's a silver lining in that somehow, and that now I pay attention more. I pay attention to my own signals, to other signals. It's very important for us to look out for each other. And we live in these bubbles sometimes that there may be someone right next to you that may be really hurting and really going through something that they just don't have a way to share that. It doesn't come up in normal conversation. So I think what I would say is when we form these women's groups and this Women in IP, we did it out of necessity. When in the beginning, there was only one or two of us, and now there's about 200 of us. And we started looking around saying, there's a need here. There's a need for community. There's a need for link, connection, that sense of not being alone. Very powerful and continues to empower. And I think that that's the beauty of community. You get to know each other and you feel safe. It creates a really safe space, which I'm sure what's being built, has been built here in Women in White Coats, is that we're having this very honest conversation among folks that we haven't met, but I feel a commonness. And so I would just say that it's important to build community. And if there's not one that meets a need, then form the community. And then you can mobilize. The power in community is you can mobilize, you can network, you can reach out in ways that one person could never reach. And that's what it's about. We're very patient facing. My mission, and I get very excited, when I talk about this, is that to be able to make a difference in another person's life, that is so purposeful. Mission with purpose. If you always have purpose behind what you're doing, that will propel you even in the darkest of times. It will propel you when you're not having a great day. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to have a great day. It is normal. Let me just say that again. It is normal to have bad days and go through crises, and to change your mind when you thought you had a path you had chosen. It doesn't feel right. Listen to the intuition. There may be a reason for that. And so I think, and also as I get older, I really do wish somehow I could have had the insight in my 20s that I have now. And I'm still a work in progress. I always tell my fellows, I'm still a student. When I stop learning, then something's wrong with this picture. We should always be learning, but as I think you get a sense, as I get older, as things change in my life, as when we think about our own health, and we think about the pandemic, when everyone's health has been perpetually threatened, we've all been vulnerable, that it gives you a laser focus on intention of living your life, not wasting time, not putting off till tomorrow, to really, I get emotional about this because it's such a strong feeling that we should never live with regret or postponement and not taking things for granted, which is so hard not to do. But I think, finding a moment of meditation, I found that even 5 minutes of quiet time meditation before I start my day, if I feel that the day is ramping up, take a moment, go to my office, close the door, say a prayer, breathe a little bit, it resets you. So I would just share those. I think we all have our different strategies, but I think those are things that I especially have reflected upon and hopefully are continuing to grow from during this last year with the pandemic.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lamb, for sharing all of those great tips. And I really love how you said to really live with purpose and intention. And it reminds me of one of my favorite books, like Start With Why, and always ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? What is the purpose and intention behind each and everything that we do? So go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in because I'm just looking at the chat and a lot of great things are happening in the chat, a lot of great encouragement. And there's a comment that keeps coming up about talking about infertility and just fertility in general for women. And I was wondering if we could address that as a group, because it seems like there's some interesting things going on in the chat. So go ahead. I think Dr. Hayes and Dr. Gilani and Dr. Plinny, whoever will want to talk about this, feel free.
Yeah, I can start that if that's okay.
Ruhi, you don't get to introduce yourself either.
Yeah.
Ruhi,
Yes, please introduce yourself.
We're Ellen and I are partners, and I'm so sorry about that. I was having difficulty. I kept on going to Google me. So I'm Dr. Ruhi Jalani, and I'm a reproductive endocrinology and infertility specialist at Vios Fertility. I'm also a fertility patient. I do have 2 kids. I don't know how you term that, previous fertility warrior or still currently trying fertility, but one of the things that I'm part of AMWA that we're constantly looking at is the prevalence of infertility in female physicians. And kind of going back to what Dr. Lamb said, a lot of them initially was like, oh, it's our schedule, it's the chaos, it's our age that we just try childbearing at a much older age. So it goes from 1 in 8 in the general population to then 1 in 4 in female physicians. There was a recent study that was done that they kind of corrected or did a multivariate analysis, and they said, well, let's control for age and let's see if that prevalence still exists. And fortunately it did. And then at the end, and Ellen's really big on wellness, and she's in church, the director of our wellness, and kind of what Dr. Lamb was saying, to kind of take care of your body as a whole. And if you don't do that, it starts impacting other areas. And one of the biggest theory was that as female physicians, we tend to neglect that. We give a lot of ourselves to different pieces of our puzzle in our life, where then we finally, when we're ready to childbear, we're completely like, what happened? And one, where did that time go? And why is my physiology so different? And Dr. Hayes, if you want to speak more to that wellness aspect.
Yeah, I think this is a great forum to talk about infertility, because like Dr. Jelani mentioned, it's much more of an issue for female physicians. And I love Dr. Lamb's choice to devote herself to her education and career and her patients. And I think that's an amazing choice. But for those of you who do want to have a family, don't let your education and your career take those opportunities away. It's another version of just not prioritizing ourselves, postponing, trying for pregnancy, and we're seeing the effects. We as female physicians need to reproduce. We need to populate with more wonderful children that will then, carry on the careers that we're doing. I would say that a lot of us really don't focus on our own wellness because we're so focused on everyone else, whether it is our family or just our patients, everyone around us, trying not to disappoint anybody, being perfectionists and saying yes to everything. I think everyone's had amazing comments about why you shouldn't do that and you should practice saying no. But fertility wellness, the reason we're focusing on that at VIOS is because there's this huge gap in knowledge as to how important it is to pay attention to your nutrition, to get exercise, to get sleep, to manage your stress. And we also talk about interesting things like environmental toxins and all kinds of things that affect our fertility. But the bottom line is, if it's a priority, make sure you are addressing that. There's obviously always specialists here to help, but we really need to make sure that these young female physicians understand that it is okay to want that and it's okay to act upon that.
And I'll chime in, and I know some people will hear a little bit about my story later on in the conference. And I did the talk to freeze or not to freeze, basically talking about my own personal experience with, looking up, hearing, hey, age 24 is the optimal time to have kids. And then being in the front row of medical school, like, wait a minute, I don't have any mate, I don't have a mate and I don't know where to go from here. And you look up and you're over age 35 and you have no children, no prospects, and you don't know where to go. So I have talked about that a little bit, and I will talk about that a little bit in the conference later on. And I'm also developing a group of women that may want to optimize their health and figure out ways or what's the best option for you in terms of getting pregnant. But I agree. If you want a baby, I am a firm believer. If you want a child, you should have a child. It doesn't matter what age you are. You may have to do some planning. The older you are, the more health problems you may have. And that may mean you need to optimize your preconception health before you get pregnant. But if you want a child, you can have a child. And I don't think that we are taught anything about childbearing. Even in med school, we're not told anything about like, hey, this is how you plan. I know you're a doctor and this is what you need to do to make sure that you are making sure your fertility health is optimized. It's just not something that unfortunately is taught in medical school, but it should be. But I'm sure that if anybody has specific questions about difficult pregnancy situations, that I'm sure I'm speaking for the other physicians on the panel, you can reach out to us individually so that we can help, try to navigate you through that fertility process. I think everyone's fertility journey is a little bit different. So it's hard to specifically say what exactly someone should do.
And I just want to jump in really quickly and say one thing. So I think I put it in the chat, but I think it's important. So I was fortunate and I did not have any fertility issues, but I had a lot of friends and colleagues who did. And after I gave birth, I had a lot of issues with being guilted about pumping or about taking time for doctor's visits. Or when I was pregnant, I ended up in the hospital, and when I was a fellow and I was basically an attending, basically got upset at me for going to get IV fluids when I passed out. So the point I'm trying to make is There's millions of stories out there, way worse than mine. And we need to normalize physicians in general, going to doctor's visits, seeing their primary care doctors, going for screening visits. And we need to normalize this fact. And I told all of my team today that they need to go schedule their PCP appointment if they have not yet, because doctors are the worst at taking care of themselves, whether it's related to fertility or anything. So I'm putting this message out there to everybody on this panel and in attendance today. If you've not scheduled a PCP appointment or a gynecology appointment in the last year, call your doctor today and schedule it, because doctors get sick way more than they should, and they don't do anything about it because they're scared they're going to miss work. So that's my PSA for all of you.
And let me chime in. I see Dr. Guy trying to raise her hand, waiting so patiently. Please go ahead.
Okay. You guys offer a lot of stuff. A mom of 5. I have one adopted child. I delivered my first one when I was 30. At first I thought, okay, I'm not going to have a fertility issue. My 3rd pregnancy was a molar pregnancy. It resulted in devastation for me. We all have our stories, and I had lost a child during that time. You get like, nothing's going to affect me. I'm fine. I'm good. I can do 20,000 things at once, and then I'll have a baby while I'm on call and deliver and go back to call again. I think that what does need to change, like Shika, you mentioned, our bosses, and then maybe us as bosses need to start that plan, that policy. Fellowship doesn't let you miss more than a certain number of weeks. Otherwise, you're not accredited to take your boards. Well, good luck, right? Not everybody's pregnancy is exactly by the book. And after you deliver, you may have complications, or maybe you want to be home more than 8 weeks, or whoever decided that. And also there's intolerance of you if you're pregnant, if you think you're going to get pregnant, if you're vomiting for the first 20 weeks, which I do for some reason with everybody. And then after you deliver, the pumping, right? I get it. I used to have to explain to because I went back into fellowship when I was pregnant with my 3rd child, and I said, I'll be right back. And you have to explain where you're going. So I just blurted out in front of my mentor, I'm going to go pump, okay? And then it was like, sorry. But I think these things shouldn't be exceptions, and we shouldn't have to work them out and get permission to have life happen while you're training and while you're working. It should be normalized. And it doesn't just apply to women in medicine. But I think that we have an opportunity as leaders, no matter what our specialty is or what our role is to possibly start that. So like you said, Shika, you told all of your employees they need to go get their well visits. All of us, if we have colleagues that are going through this maternity leave or post, we encourage them to take a break, to pump, have a place to have privacy, or take the appropriate maternity leave. I think that needs to improve and change in all different levels, so that we're not timing our life like a schedule, especially with the years of training it takes.
Yeah, so many good points there. Dr. Michaud, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I wanna share this little exercise that was really life-changing for me. I had a privilege of taking a workshop with Liz Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love. And she did the most amazing exercise. And this has to do with, obviously, so much of what we're experiencing is external pressures and what we're going through and what the society expects from us. But I think at the very visceral level, we do not give ourselves permission. I think as women, we are running around with our hair on fire, and that's become a status quo. And one of the most beautiful things that she did with us was that she said, remember when you were in elementary school and you would get a permission slip from your principal that you could skip the PE? And she said, remember the feeling you had with that permission slip in your hand and walking in front of everyone, no guilt, no judgment, no hesitation, you would walk around. And she said, when you become an adult, you are the author of that permission slip. And she had us do that exercise, actually literally from the principal office of, and we wrote the name of the school, and it said, you have the permission to, for 5 minutes, uninterrupted, write it down, as well as you have a permission not to. We all talked about the to-do list, but it's just as important to talk about the not to-do list. I mean, delegate, delete, delegate, delete. I am the most disengaging person, and I say it in the most loving way, that when I don't need things in my life, I just don't need things in my life. We have to set our own boundaries and be okay to walk away when people don't respect it, as opposed to be caught up in this never ending. So have the audacity to write a permission slip for yourself to fight for the things that you want to do and fight for the things that you don't want to do. You don't owe an explanation to anyone. So I think that was a huge lesson for me personally, which I share with all my clients and the blog about it, is that we are the adult in our own life. We are the author of our own life. So at some point, so much of it is put on us, no doubt, but we forget there's so much chatter in our head. We don't even know what we want anymore because we're fighting all these, difficult pressures and forces that are, put on us. So I just wanted to give you the permission slip to write what you want to do and what you don't want to do and be done with it.
Love that. And I think after this, yes, I love that. And after this, I think we should all, everyone who's watching, all the panelists, we should all write down something that we're giving ourselves permission for today, the next few days, or whenever into the future. So for my last question, I want to just touch on something that, we have our mission here at Women in White Coats, which is to uplift and empower women doctors throughout life and career. And Amber and I, as the co-founders, we've been talking a lot about vision, what would we love to see change in medicine? Like if we had that magic wand, if we could just, make something change, like the way we really want it to be, what would it be? And for me, one of the things I said is I would love for medicine to be a really family-friendly profession. I have a daughter who is now 9, and she wants to, well, she said she'd like to be a veterinarian. So she would like to be a doctor and go into the medical field. But I hesitate to encourage her because I'm thinking about all the obstacles I had to face, the challenges, the barriers, and I was hoping that a lot would change by the time that she is of age to go into medicine. I'm not sure it will, and I'm not sure it won't. Who knows? It may, but I'd love for it to be a family-friendly profession that I don't hesitate to recommend to young girls and women who want to consider it. And I know for Amber, she talks about disrupting the culture of medicine to make it, to really kind of highlight the strengths that women doctors bring. So I'd love to hear from each one of you. This will be kind of a lightning round, so we'll go quickly in a couple of sentences. If you can go ahead and say your vision. So I'll start, I'll just go one by one, calling Dr. Guy to go first.
Thank you. So this hits me to my heart. My number 3 child, Madeline, 21 years old, she's taking her MCAT, freaking out right now. The stress that is on women because the male colleagues that she's come across are asking her already, hope you're not planning on having a family. Are you going to be getting married? This and that. And she's 21. And the stress of getting into medical school has gotten ridiculous. You have to, the qualifications are more than just what is normal anymore. They want things that are just outlandish. You want good people who are smart, who want to care for others and want to do good things, right? And they seem to forget that. And so there's that stress on women in medicine wanting to go into medicine. So like you mentioned, you keep trying to sway your daughter away because you saw what we did. I'd like the duration of med school to be maybe slower and or shorter and maybe more focus on your training for the practical part so that we're not 12 years in training by the time we get out and think that that's when we start our family. A lot could be cut out of there. It could be more, streamlined or flexible with different options. So those are some of the things I'm seeing with my own kid who's looking at it now.
What great perspective, seeing it, your daughter go through it right now. All right, Dr. Jacobs.
Thanks. I was late to the game with child rearing. I had my daughter at 46. So you can imagine that that's been a complicated road. She's now a 12-year-old, so you can figure out how old I am. So that brings me to my point about what I would like to see. First of all, it's always been a male's profession. It still is. Let's not kid ourselves. I was told very young in my medical training, you have to be hard, you have to be harder, and you have to work harder. And I'm sorry, but that's still the way that I see it now, at least in my particular field. As I get ready to look at retirement, I would like to have us look at medicine as spanning the whole breadth of our experience, because I think that there is no pathway for adequate retirement for women in the medical field. And all of you seem younger than me. And you'll probably get to this point in time where you're looking at that and saying, you know, where is the direction here? Where are the opportunities and options for part-time work, professor emeritus spots, things like that, you know, because they really don't exist yet. And I think we need to fashion that for ourselves.
Thank you for bringing that perspective. Dr. Hayes?
Yeah, I think that as women in medicine, it's always going to be challenging. It's always going to be challenging to do medical school, to train, to practice medicine. But I think it's our responsibility in positions of power, or just really any female physicians, to lead by example. And what I mean by that is not that we all have to do everything and succeed at everything and say yes to everything. We need to give an example that we're picking and choosing and we're crafting the life that we want, because there are many different ways to practice medicine. My 14-year-old son and 16-year-old daughter both at this point think they want to be physicians too. And I think, oh gosh, that's all we've shown them, but there's so many things to do. But I want all of us to try to leave this better than we found it for the next generation of physicians.
I agree. I love that. Dr. Lamb?
Yes, I think a couple of things that come to mind for me. I think that there should be early, again, to the point of examples, I think before people even consider medical school, there should be now an updated version of a variety of paths that a person can choose if they want to do dual degrees, if they want to do legal in medicine, business in medicine, entrepreneurship in medicine, innovation, right? So I think that we need to update, refresh on the examples that exist and get away from the tradition. You know, the tradition is such a hard pillar to knock over, but I think it's well past time. I mean, we were much more innovative than we went to medical school. And I think if young people can see those potential possibilities, that they're more apt to go into it. And also they're more apt to link to mentors who can guide them so that they don't make some of the missteps that delay the end result of that. I also think there should be a strategy on knocking over this fundamental business of medicine. When medicine is really driven by the business model, it sometimes feels like it's so heavily weighted that it doesn't give proper value to academia, efforts that are so vital to research and to forward thinking for better patient care and quality and safety. I mean, the establishment has to understand that it cannot be run solely as a business. We are not machines, we are not factories, we are people. And people, we're people taking care of people. And I think we have to push back very strategically and not complain so much about it, but to push back on it so that how else will it change? I mean, I think if enough of us push back and show that there are other ways that the same goals can be met, why are we sitting here? Why are we letting that happen? So those are my two things, I think. Innovation and how we approach medicine, and then moving away from this hungry business model that seems very unfulfilling.
You raised so many great points there, Dr. Lamb. I really appreciate that perspective. Dr. Plenty?
Yeah, I think so many people have made such good points. For me, in addition to everything else, if we could have an ideal world, we implement everything else that you guys said. But I would definitely want to see more women in medicine being promoted equally. And that is in terms of tenure track versus leadership in private practice and versus hospital administration. There's like no reason that there should be discordancy in terms of promotion of women compared to men, especially when, you know, we're bosses. We can do the job that men can do and sometimes better. So I would like to see that. And then I would also like to see us look at, and that's just in general, just women in general, not just doctors. If we're looking at the pay equity, like we should get paid equal for equal work. And even in medicine, that isn't happening. You could have somebody in the same group taking the same amount of vacation, seeing the same amount of patients, and the man will get paid more than the woman. I don't understand that. So more pay transparency and equal pay for equal work would be what I would want to see happen.
Yes, 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 absolutely, 1000%. Dr. Jane.
So Dr. Plenty stole some of mine, but they're all excellent points. So I will be very fast because I know we're running over. I believe that one, you said what I want to see happen in medicine. One, equity and equality. So equity and equality, I think, are two different topics that both need to be addressed. Pay equity is key. Seeing women advance into leadership positions equitably, because that's not happening. Awards, women are not getting awards that should be getting awards. There's no equity there. When it comes to grant funding, if you're in academics, when it comes to promotions, when it comes to basically every single aspect of healthcare, there is not equity. The second thing, the big thing for me is physician autonomy. That's, I think, really important. And I'm sorry, I'm on call, so I have to take this call.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Jelani?
I think I'm going to use my experience to kind of give some headers. My very first, I knew I wanted to be a fertility doctor, but I guess my very eye-opening experience was when I was doing my rotation, my OB-GYN rotation, and I told my OB-GYN preceptors, oh, I'm going to be a OB-GYN and then a fertility doctor. And I remember she just looked at me and she said, I'm your mom and you're a kid in the candy store. And I'm saying, no, walk away from that candy because it's bad for you. She's like, do not be OB-GYN. And I was like, why would you say that? You're practicing. And then she told me how hard her life was and there was no balance and it was so different from her husband, who was also a doctor, and they were divorced and what impact it had on her kids. And she wished she could go back. And I was so naive that I was like, that's just so silly. That was just you. And then as I progressed in my career, I saw through the eyes of being a fertility patient, how difficult it was to family plan. The comments I would have to hear from my female, surprisingly, directors, just attendings that, oh, you're going again, or you're going to be off again. Oh, you want another baby? Like stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, this is truly just a bad experience, or having to manage vacation versus maternity leave. And that should never be the case. So my eventual hope is to kind of, in hindsight, be more proactive with fertility preservation, allow for stuff like family planning, and educate are very young that, like Dr. Plenty said, in medical school, hey, peak fertility is this. When you go to medical school, these are the benefits that we offer. This is your allocated time to do this. And then same kind of transpire through your GME with residency and fellowship. I know that's just this really small piece of the puzzle, but that's something really near and dear to my heart.
Yes, I think those are wonderful suggestions, Dr. Jelani. And Dr. Faria had to hop off, but she says, my recommendation is that we normalize mental health days just like sick days. No questions asked if people need to take them. I also encourage that every single physician be supported to have a life coach to be supported. And I want to leave the last word to our hero of the year, Dr. Khanna, to share your vision. What would you like to see change in medicine? So we'd love to hear that.
Well, I just made some notes, so I'm going to kind of go off of almost what everyone said. First of all, I agree with everybody. What struck me most poignantly were Dr. Jacobs' comments and Dr. James' comments, particularly about women and needing more women to be influencers, I would say, in medicine. And I think that will come. And I'm very optimistic. Just talking to all of you in the leadership roles and the leadership efforts that you are initiating, I think what will happen is that when women succeed to higher levels of administration, and operations and organization, I think some of these changes that all of us want will come because we know, we recognize, we know what we went through. We want to help others. We want to send the elevator down. We want to extend our hands. So I think that will come. It will take time. I also appreciate what Dr. Jacobs said earlier about how hard it is for kids now to get into medical school. I have a niece and a nephew who are, you know, at the tail end. One is finishing a residency and one is getting into residency. But, you know, I can appreciate the struggles that they had to go through, which were, I really do believe it's much harder today than when I got in. I will also want to just throw something out for all of you to consider. It's great that all of you have children, most of you, except for Dr. Lamb, I believe, and myself. But you don't have to have kids to have influence on people. I myself have mentored dozens of both boys and girls and helped them come up through the ranks, whether it be through, you know, from middle school all the way up through residency. And I think that we tend to forget that we can also have influence on children if they're not our biological children. And last is I appreciate what Dr. Lamb said, that we need to offer more options so kids can avoid mistakes. There's a difference between making a mistake that could have been avoidable and preventable versus life experience. And I think if we lay the cards out on the table and say, you can go through these pathways, you can go through these pathways, then it gives kids a much better understanding and an idea. And I can tell you firsthand, having these kids in my life who have gone through these experiences recently to get into medical school and residency, is their counselors and their teachers are not doing it all. We really have to step in and help them out.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khanna. Thank you. Let's give a virtual round of applause to all the panelists. Thank you so much for spending this time with us, for sharing your pearls of wisdom, for sharing your experiences. We really, really appreciate how open, vulnerable, and courageous you were to come on here and talk with us today, and just taking your precious time as well. So thank you so much. And for all the attendees, Amber put in the chat what's coming up next for today, and please be sure to check that out. Thank you all. Bye-bye.